Okay, my name is Jameel Rawls, and this is Jameel Rawls Studies. Now, what I want to be doing is, at this time, is breaking down how humans live, what humans are, how your mind is programmed, how you can change that, and where I'm coming from in my research. Now, after multiple years of reading books, going out and talking to people privately, conducting interviews, writing letters, making phone calls, I came into a wealth of knowledge about the human species, how there's different types of human species, how the world is nothing like anything we've been told, or at least I've been told, growing up through the public educational system and growing up in general society. I learned that the things that I was meant to think that were really are not, or are not as they seem. In a sense, they may be a little bit like how they're explained, but they're really nothing like it. They're about 10% of what you think it is. And so after putting energy into this, that was my passion to read and study, to go out to the library and read different sorts of books on esoteric subjects pertaining to different cultures, especially historical work, 1700s, 1800s, thousands of years ago, ancient Egypt, questioning ancient Atlantis, Lemuria, the 60s and 70s was definitely a favorite of mine. And speaking to people about the mystical traditions of the world has opened me up a lot. Not just the historical connotation of a different viewpoint, but the mystical history. Like for such, there has never been a civilization on this planet that did not have a zodiac. You know, most people don't know that. Okay, and when people are born, they're given a language. They're told, hey, you're male or female. They're given a religion often, maybe not so often anymore, but often enough. They're given, of course, a whole cultural background, a whole cultural identity that is usually connected to the language they were given. So, from a child, they're being told, this is your name, this is your name. They're being programmed with a particular language. The religion will come into effect. Then music, they're shown what types of music you can pick from, what kind of music do you like, and they're shown oftentimes what will be accepted and not accepted if you're born into a certain family. Classical music may be the only music, maybe jazz, maybe rock, maybe hip hop. Depending on where you grow up, you're taught to identify your culture, usually in a Western context, with the color of your skin. So like in Europe, you can have the same color skin as a neighboring country, but your language will be different, your whole culture will be different, the way you dress could be different, maybe not so much as much now as it used to be, but the way you dress will be different, the way you eat everything will be different. You'll have this in Europe, you can have the same color skin, everything different. Same thing in Asia, same color skin, but everything different. In America, usually if you have the same color skin, you're in the same cultural, political, socioeconomic face. You all have that same face. So, but anyhow, so everybody's taught growing up as children, this is who you are, this is your family, this is your language, this is where you come from, this is your history, and people learn from the adults above them. Most of the things aren't verbally told to them. People pick up on it through vibration. I remember as a child, I could walk in a room, and if there was an adult in the room, I could look at the adult, and I would get a feeling from the adult as to what this person was going through. Was this an angry person? Was this a not so good person? Was this a fun person, a happy person? As a child, you can get that feeling from them. And so most children growing up learn non-verbally. 90% of communication is body language, right? Okay, so anyhow, and as we've been moving in Western civilization, as we've been moving, our connection to the land has ceased in many areas of the country, at least the whole Western world, but definitely the country. People aren't farming like they used to. People aren't living off the land like they used to. More people are living in cities now than they used to live in rural areas. So a lot of things have changed. A lot of the perceptions of reality have changed, and the adult world, how it raises children, has changed. People are just growing up very differently. Small things like not having shoes and walking on the ground, walking on the earth, walking on the dirt, changes a lot. When you take your shoes off and you walk through the grass or walk through the mud or walk through the dirt, you're more connected to the earth. You're more electrically, magnetically connected to the earth. So you're in synchronous harmony with the earth's vibration. When you constantly are wearing tennis shoes and walking on pavement, you lose your natural connection to the earth. That does a lot. Most people in today's world are not walking on the earth. They're not actually walking on earth. People don't. There's a difference between walking on the city and walking on the earth. Okay, when you walk on the earth, you're on the wilderness. It's a whole different ballpark. When you're walking on the city, there's different dynamics. And in the city, people have been technologically so influenced now with the cell phones, the iPads, the flat screens. The mindset of the individual in the city is completely different. So after everybody's learned all their languages and they learned what their name is, and they've been taught, basically through school, not how to think, but what to think. They've been told what is real, what is not real by the school. They reach a certain age limit, say they get around 15, 16, 18, 19, they want to rebel. A lot of the younger people want to rebel. Okay, in today's world, a lot of them are hooked up on drugs to begin with. The pharmaceutical company is pumping the drugs down the children's mouths. But by the time they reach an adolescence age, they pretty much got a feeling that this is artificial. It's artificial. Not necessarily even the parents' fault. Just the way the structure is set up. So people want to rebel. Even the rebellion is artificially shown. People are shown how to rebel. What's acceptable rebellion. They're shown through media, through television, what types of things to do. So, a young teenage guy may be susceptible to going out and stealing a car or something like that. As a form of rebellion, as not approving of the reality they're in, of the civilization they're in, of the reality they're in. So they may not be too sure how to educationally, intellectually break this down and describe it to an audience and tell them what's wrong or do something different to try to change the scenario. So they may naturally just want to rebel and go out, steal a car, break a window, end up on dope. Okay, then you have the dark side that's there to catch them. The people on the dark side, the people more connected to the nefarious activity that's going on, they know society is artificial. They know what's going on, so they're waiting for the individual to fall back and get into some dark action. Okay, so now we're coming up with thoughts of rebellion. People are shown, even artists. There's a lot of talented artists out there. There's a lot of really good artists that I really appreciate. Very few people are coming up with their own art. Very few people are producing their own art. Very few people are creating their own art, right? The art is shown to them what they want. And people never even question the fashion that they pick or anything. They just do it. Even the way people talk. It's crazy. I'll be sitting there, right? And I'll be listening to somebody and they have a cliche. Everybody has a cliche way of talking. They all sound like they're from like music television. They all sound like they're speaking from some sort of sitcom show or something like that. They all have a cliche way of talking. They all talk the same way. And it's getting to the point to where even if they're from a different culture, they do it. I was listening to this woman speaking. She was from the Eastern Europe, or no, she was from the Middle East or Eastern Europe, and she had the same cliche way of talking as women in the States do, and it's sort of a Valley Girl type accent, right? It used to be a time when you would only hear this certain kind of accent if you went to the San Fernando Valley over in LA. So it was a Valley Girl accent. So I'm like, wow, the whole world adopted the Valley Girl accent like that. The silliness of it. Why would somebody change their natural way of speaking based on what they're perceiving through television and through movies and stuff? That's what I'm seeing. I'm talking about how societies are the artificial creation and whatnot that's going on. And so people are, and then again, going back to what I was saying about the greater adults. If you're a smaller person, you're a smaller being, and you get around people who are bigger than you that carry a bigger vibration, you're naturally going to adopt that. So a lot of people who are smaller, the younger people, I feel they're afraid to speak up. They're afraid to say anything. They know they'll be ridiculed. So it's like, why even bother? Why even say anything about it? You know you'll be ridiculed about it, right? You might as well go out and get high. You might as well go out and get high. You know, it's easier to go out and get high, or it's easier to go out and do something wrong, because if you say something about it, then you're going to get in trouble, right? So that's my general perspective. So looking at that, looking how people are raised, they go through a period where they're shown all these things and told all these things, and then naturally they find out they have desires. They knew they had naturally. People still have desires, right? So people are still going through life, trying to find these desires, trying to reach certain goals, trying to reach certain pinnacles. But their mind, their consciousness, the psychology of their being has been fragmented or programmed. They've learned all these fears. As a child, people don't have. As a child born, they don't have. People have very little fear. Loud noises. I think children are naturally afraid of. Babies are afraid of loud noises, or afraid maybe well, falling might be one of them. But the sensation of fear of not having approval, all these small fears, people don't have those. They slowly and gradually learn to have them. They slowly and gradually learn to adopt these fears, and fears are disconnections. Okay, fears are disconnections. And so as people are still trying to find their desires and reach their goals, they still have all these disconnections that they never dealt with. They have things going on that they never confronted and never challenged. Ways of thinking that they've adopted and they've picked up that they themselves wouldn't have chose for themselves. Perhaps a lot of people have suppressed these things. They've suppressed it and buried it and forgot they buried it. And then while they're out trying to achieve their goals, these fears come up. These issues come up that they've adopted and it's been handed down to them. I want to explain it through a film. There was a film known as Nightmare on Elm Street. And in that film, Freddy Krueger, who was played by the actor Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger, he was a child killer. He was a child killer, and he lived on Elm Street. He was a child killer. He lived on Elm Street, and the parents of Elm Street, he ended up going to court. For he was taking these children to a boiler room and killing the children, burning the children, right? And so, in the story of Nightmare on Elm Street is, he ends up going to court and he beats the case on a technicality. Right? Freddy Krueger beat the whole case on a technicality. So the parents of Elm Street, they turned into an angry mob, and basically they burned him alive in the boiler room. I believe the story is they took him to the boiler room and burned him alive, or somewhere he got burned alive, and now after that he haunts the children of Elm Street through their dreams. That's the story of Freddy Krueger. So he haunts the children of Elm Street, but the catch is the parents never acknowledge it. The parents crucified him, got rid of him, and now he terrorizes the children of Elm Street, and the parents won't admit to it. And the parents will not explain the story to the children. They hid the story so nobody would know what happened. So each generation, the children still keep getting terrorized by this phantom, and the parents keep pretending like this creature is not real. The parents keep pretending as if this creature isn't real. This is a supernatural. This being, this man from beyond is coming back and killing children. But the parents don't take the time to explain to the children. If you really think about it, I've never really heard any movie critics comment on this, but if you really think about it, it's the parents who are responsible for killing the children. They're not explaining to the children what's going on, and they're not allowing the children the permission to know, we know what you're going through. They would rather tell the children they're crazy, or put them on medication, or lock them away, or put bars on their windows, like what happened with Nancy and Nancy's father, played by John Saxon, where they put her in the house and put bars on the window rather than sit down and explain to her they knew what she was talking about. See, that's a good demonstration to me of what's been going on on this planet. Is people are born, they go through all these things, and nobody is sitting down and explaining to them what's happened. Nobody is sitting down and explaining to them what's happened. Instead, they're going to blame the individual. They're going to turn the individual. They're going to punish the individual before they help set them free. So historically, I've gone back and looked into different time periods and in different ages, because the past and the future both connect into the now. And this gets into quantum physics, parallel realities, timelines, even into what people know as the Mandela effect. But there's an old saying, the truth shall set you free. As you are in the now, the more you know of what brought you here, and the more you will be able to accept what's coming for you in the future. Okay. So that's, and people used to, people lived a lot simpler. I'm looking at some notes I have, and some older notes I have, and it's speaking about in the 1960s, the United States had 78 business schools. By the end of the 1970s, 135 business schools. In 1990, the United States had 249 business schools. Wow. That's quite a leap. And so, people get into these modes of playing characters. They learn to be characters that they are not, and they feel that they cannot get out of this character role. There was an actor who proved himself to be a very good actor. He was a musician, the late Tupac Shakur. The late Tupac Shakur played in a film known as Juice. And my perception, that was the first movie I really sat down and watched. I remember it came out, I seen the film 1991 or 92. I saw the film and I remembered it. People had, somebody, older than me had rented it, and I sat down and watched it. And I thought it was so interesting. I thought in the movie, Tupac played the role of the character of the Bishop, right? Bishop. And I thought his hair was so interesting, the way he had his haircut and everything, and the style. And I didn't even know who he was. I didn't know who Tupac was. When I saw that, I remember when everybody saw that movie around that time, a lot of people thought it was a great movie, but I remember a lot of the older people, a lot of the adults, didn't like the movie. They saw that as being who Tupac was. They saw the way he cursed in the movie and the way he acted, and at the end how he started gunning everybody down. And if you haven't seen the movie, you should go see it. It's an interesting movie. And I remember a lot of the older adults, they identified his role in that movie as being him. And people would say, I remember I heard somebody say, I don't want my children to watch that. Like that. And then a couple years later, I seen him doing rap. I remember I was listening to somebody. They had a tape in their car. We were over somebody's house. Somebody had tape, and it was a rapper. And I said, "Wow, the guy from the movie does music too. The guy from the movie is a rapper." Lo and behold, looking back now, if you would have looked at the character of Tupac Shakur before that film, he was a completely different person. Later on, I learned he did ballet. He went to the Baltimore School of Arts and Theater. He was even feminine. No disrespect to the late Tupac Shakur, but if you would have he was more. Well, I'll put it this way: his mannerisms were more feminine than what he displayed after the film Juice. And the way he came across was more gentle. I'll say it like that. Not necessarily more feminine, but he was more of a gentle person. He was more gentle before the film Juice. And you can see it if you listen to his older interviews. Before the film Juice, there's been some made when he was in his late teens. And he was a rapper at the time too. So if you go back, you listen to his older music, his older interviews, way different guy. He makes one film, then he turns into a super thug, a super gangster. And a lot of people missed the transition. They didn't know who he was or know him before the film. So all they had to judge him by was the film. Okay, so this is going to go a little bit deeper, but I want people to realize when somebody gets in character or gets in role, it takes them a long time to get out of it. Perhaps he grew up around people like that, so he knew how to play the character. But a lot of actors who get deep into a role in a film, it may take them a year, sometimes 2 years, to get out of the role. It may take them a couple years to get out of the role. And that's something that's something happening with most people. It takes a couple years just to get out of the role. So if you've grown up a certain way around certain people and you've adopted a certain lifestyle, whether you could be negative or bad, some people are born with really good parents who have demonstrated discipline and kindness and love, and they move on to get good grades and get a good job. I'm not trying to say there's a lot of success stories out there. But point being, people grow up in a certain way, it becomes their character. And they never learn how to get out of the character. That no one's ever explained to them, you're in a role. You're playing a role. You're role playing. You've learned this, and if you want to, you can come out of it. People have been trained. People's minds have been trained. Like I was speaking earlier about the cliche voice thing. People talk in these cliche voices and these cliche accents without even realizing they've adopted it. It's become a trend, and they picked it up. They don't even know it. A lot of times they don't even know it. So finding part of my journey through life has been learning about things that had happened in the ancient past that I had no idea about. I had no idea there was such thing as sound alchemy, and you can heal yourself with sounds. I didn't know the ancient Egyptians had medical knives. The ancient Egyptians were jacks of all trades, so to speak. They did all sorts of holistic healing and different therapeutic things that work today better than modern medicine even works. A lot of ways, I didn't know any of this stuff. Had I known a lot of this stuff, I would have been living differently. Had I had the knowledge and the comprehension, I would have been living much differently. For instance, during World War II, nobody told me there were Soviet monks. The Soviet Union, had monks, or the Nazis worked with monks. Small things like that. And say, you bring it up to people now, and they say, "What are you talking about? Monks?" In the Soviet Union, say, "Yeah, I just read a book on it. Or I just did a documentary on it." Okay, and then I want to leave off with, you have the material world, the material plane, and the spiritual world. And spirituality is number one. Prayer is number one. You can have all the metaphysical knowledge you want, and you can have all the esoteric knowledge you want, and there's always room for more. Like Socrates said, a wise man knows how much he does not know. Remember that, that was a beautiful saying Socrates said. And so there's always room for more knowledge. There's always room for growth and expansion. But if your spirituality is not right, if you're not right in your heart with who you want to be, or you're not right in your essence, in your spiritual character with where you want to be, then no amount of knowledge is going to help you. You'd be better off being ignorant, ill-informed, homeless in the streets. Maybe I won't take it that far, but you would be better off. Well, maybe we could take it that far. Yeah, you'd be better off living like that than to be comfortable and miserable. There's a lot of miserable people on the streets, but there's a lot of content, happy people. You go to these third world countries, and you see a lot of these people are smiling and happy, and they don't have anything. There's a lot of people who have lost out. They may have wealth and finance and money, and they may be miserable, and that's nothing. That's not a funny situation. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that in glory. I remember I've heard people say that before, and they almost say it in glory, like that's a good thing. That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. So, that's not a good thing. And there's many different forms of wealth. There's a wealth of knowledge, spiritual wealth, all different forms of wealth. And I'm going to close off. I got to get back to my studies, but this is a small personal tape I did on metaphysics. All right.